Hi, everybody. It's Sally Wagner. Welcome to High Frequency Mindset Podcast. Today, I'm very pleased to welcome our guest, Christie Nix. Christie, welcome.
Thank you, Sally.
I'm so happy you're
Excited to be
here.
here.
I can't wait to dive in. But first, I want to introduce you to our audience.
Okay.
Christie Nix is a professional speaker, visual artist, expert storyteller, and emotional clarity coach. She has edited and produced full-length films. She is a Reiki Master, a Therapeutic Yoga Instructor, and co-founder of the revolutionary coaching practice rREST. That's rREST, R-E-S-T, spelled with two R's. So it's small r and then R-E-S-T. She has partnered with two PhD scientists with expertise in neuroscience and molecular biology. Together, pardon me, they are on a mission to help you conquer your emotions using science-backed techniques with proven results over the past 20 years. Christie, again, welcome, and thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. And thank you for pronouncing rest correctly and pointing it out, because I think that's confusing to everyone. So I appreciate it. Everybody kind of puts an R rest to it. They like kind of give it a growl. So that's fine too, but
Sure. Well, the information that you provided to me was helpful. So I kind of I should have verified it with you before I read that, but I thought I was on the right track with it.
You were, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, there's so much there in that brief little bio to talk about. And I want to start with rest. Because that just sounds fascinating to me. So what is it and how did you come up with it?
Okay, I didn't come up with it. I had one session with Dr. Cindy. Let me give you a little backstory.
Okay,
because I think it's really important to know. I had no idea what I was getting myself into, Sally, when I met her on Zoom. But I was like, it kind of started out, I was on the phone with a doctor, and doctors usually have such good bedside manner. And this doctor just did not. He said on the phone, I'd never met him, but he just said, he's like, you shouldn't have waited so long to get in here. And I could feel like this huge level of judgment. And I was like, wait a minute, this guy doesn't know me. He's never spoken to me before. All he knew were the scans that he was looking at. And he was just kind of reporting back to everything that he was seeing. But oh my gosh, Sally, everything that was running through my head at that moment were the years, I'm talking years, I had spent trying to figure out what was wrong with me. And I go and see all these practitioners, and every single one of them is telling me that I was fine. So when he called and tells me that like I should have done something earlier, it just kind of sent this space of like feeling hopeless and frustration. And I hate to also admit this, but I also kind of just felt like this fraud. I was working in the wellness industry and I was doing everything I could, and I was still struggling with my health. And I feel like that's for a lot of people. They're just trying to figure out that root cause.
Yeah.
And so I was communicating with one of my mentors, who is one of my co-founders with rREST, and I was just telling her how frustrated I was. I couldn't speak. She had to speak for me. I had lost my voice for weeks on end. And she said, have you ever thought this was emotional? And Sally, like, I'm a therapeutic yoga teacher, and it never even crossed my mind that she was asking if this could have been emotional. It was just like, it didn't even occur to me. And I almost didn't even know what she meant by it. But she gave me the best prescription, because she is Dr. Ray. And she said, I want you to work with Dr. Cindy Scholes. And I am telling you, my life shifted in a matter of an hour with her. It was just like, I don't ever want to make it sound like a rest session is the most profound thing. But for me, it was like my soul was just so ready for a shift and change. Like I needed this so badly. And the little shifts are great, because it's kind of like, I know I'm jumping ahead, but it's kind of like when you think about you brush your teeth every day, you have teeth later on down the road. And that's kind of what I think about with rest, is like you continue to have rest sessions, and it continues to help you evolve and become just this greater version of yourself, like kind of what your soul signed up for. So my soul was like, Christie, you've got to do this. But what happened was, I get on Zoom just like you and I are today with Dr. Cindy, and I told her just what I had told you. And she connected me to this event in my childhood that was holding me back from losing my voice and having these health issues today. And I couldn't believe it. Like, it never even dawned on me. And now most people don't remember that event that happens. You know, we always say we work with trauma, but we work with childhood trauma, things that, like, maybe you see a kid bringing out at Target because they can't get the game or the toy that they want, and that's not soothed. We worked with stuff like small stuff like that, not necessarily the big adverse childhood expenses, although they do come up. But for me, it was an adverse childhood experience where I had lost one of my friends. She was unfortunately waiting for the bus, and she dropped her Cabbage Patch in the road, and a truck hit her. So for me, it was a very profound experience. I didn't, thank goodness I didn't witness it. So it kind of gets me. My dad, though, was in the kitchen, and she died in his arms. He was a fireman. So he had to tell me what death was about when I was 3 years old. And I stopped talking. My mom took me to a therapist, and eventually I got my voice back, and everything seemed to be fine. However, it's almost as if we put a Band-Aid on it, and it never fully healed. So it came back full circle to me in my adulthood. And what happened after I worked with Dr. Cindy, it was just, Sally, it was as if this weight was just taken completely off my shoulders, and I didn't even know I was carrying. And I just felt lighter. I know it sounds so cheesy, but I always say it. It feels like I was Ariel, the little mermaid who got her voice back, because I've had it since. Like, I haven't lost it, thank goodness. And I just remember, like, if I could reach through Zoom with her and just grab Dr. Cindy by the shoulders and just give her a big hug, but then a shake of, like, you cannot be the only person who knows how to do this. So I know I wasn't the first person who said it, but I think I might have been the straw that broke the camel's back to make her teach me what she was doing, because I just thought, as a coach, I had coached so many people, and they knew what they wanted. I saw the potential in them, yet they weren't what they had committed to themselves to do, or what I had coached them to do. They had come to me and said, this is the goal that I want to achieve. And we would plan and make a step-by-step process. Yet there was self-sabotage. There was not worthiness. There was not believe in themselves. There was like a whole list of excuses that I know you as a coach have also experienced with your clients. And it just dawned on me that, like, this is the thing where we can go into the subconscious mind and, like, gently reach in and look and say, what was that original event that happened? And we can send some forgiveness for it and understanding, and look at it from an adult perspective. It's kind of like just going in and weeding from the garden of your mind and just pulling it out, and things get easier. I'm not saying it's a one and done thing. For me, that one session was monumental. I've never had a session like that since, but little things have evolved for me throughout the rest of my life. I kind of say now, it's like, I used to believe in having a personal trainer because there's no way I'm going to get to the gym by myself. So having a rest coach has been so just life-changing, to be able to leap over those little self-sabotages that I put in my own way.
Yeah, there's so much there, and what you say is so on point about, the self-sabotage, the limiting beliefs, the beliefs of unworthiness, and all those things, traumas, big traumas, little traumas, all kinds of traumas that we carried with us. And so maybe we're past the age of the kid in the grocery store having a little fit, and yet we're grown-up kids running around with those same traumas until they're resolved, and all of that stuff lives in our bodies, right? The emotion, trauma, the accumulated toxins. When we have those low frequencies of emotions and trauma in our bodies, guess what? Toxins accumulate in those areas, and so we have disease and pain and all of that kind of stuff. So
yes, there's a part of me going, did we just become best friends? I feel like we could talk forever. But that's it. And Sally, I think about, like, originally my friends who know me either know me as Christie, because I was like this junk food junkie most of my childhood and adult life. And it was like always having McDonald's cheeseburger Happy Meal. And then all of a sudden I went cold turkey one day and just went, that's it, I'm going to be plant-based. And it was this huge pivot. So my friends either know me as before or after. And I was always committed to like, I lost my dad at a really young age, my early 30s, and it was because of reasons that could have been prevented. And I just remember standing at the foot of his bed and looking down at this man who jumped out of airplanes, who put fires out from the air, and like built homes. And yet here he is leaving this planet because he didn't take care of himself. He took care of everything else.
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking there has to be a better way. And I got on this huge mission to help people see like how much plants can not only like reverse disease, but prevent it in the first place, And it was like this whole, like this, I'll never forget the statistic that sticks out at 75% of all chronic disease is preventable. That's like, and I know you know this, but for maybe a listener that's like sitting here thinking about this, like if I were to hand them a lottery ticket and I'm like, you have a 75% chance of winning the lottery, would you buy the ticket? And they'd buy it. I mean, even if they have 25%, but they're not doing it with their health, right? And so for me, it was like this whole process of thinking that longevity and a long, healthy, happy life had everything to do with how we ate and how we moved and how we thought.
Yeah.
And I never factored in the stress and how stress, like 90% of the chronic diseases we're experiencing are contributed to the stress.
Right.
So now I feel like fully armed. I've got my emotional coaching over here and my being able to help people eat better. And I just feel like that's my big mission in life, to be able to connect. So when you said all the things that you just said, my soul said, did we just become best friends?
Yes, exactly. And I love that you included the thoughts, the stress, because the studies show that most of the diseases of the modern age are inflammatory disease, and we are more or less susceptible to inflammatory disease based on our thoughts, our ability to deal with stress, all of that kind of stuff. I mean, because those things, our thoughts, our emotions, everything affect the length of the telomeres on our little DNA strands. And
yes, the little shoelace ends.
Exactly. Yeah, like the little caps on the shoelaces. And so it's like, all of that stuff truly does live in our bodies at a subcellular level, at a DNA level, right? And if that is where it lives, then we can affect ourselves at a DNA level based on changing thoughts.
Yeah. That's like to me, that foundation of spontaneous healing. Oh my gosh, I love hearing Joe Dispenza talk about the people that experience rapid shifts because they were ready and they believed it could happen.
I experienced that myself many years ago. I had not a fatal illness, but it certainly felt like it was a death sentence, certainly not a full life sentence, right? In the sense of living a full life. I suffered with fibromyalgia, and to the point where I was considering, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to go out of my job on disability because I can't function. I can't, it was the constant pain. It was the fog. It was everything with fibromyalgia. And I experienced, the shorthand is a miraculous healing. I know it's, that's just a shorthand way of saying it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think it's very commonplace what happened to me. It can be, certainly. And as I report the event, I always tell people, I didn't change my life and then I was healed. I was healed and I changed my life to manifest that healing. And I think that we all have that capacity for healing.
Yes. Yes. Would you probably have on your other podcasts, maybe I missed it, but is there a specific, like something for you that just made the shift with that healing?
I don't know the exact moment. I do know that there was a shift in thinking. And when that happened, everything changed. Wow. Everything changed. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then suddenly I was well. I was on that trajectory of wellness.
In fibromyalgia, I mean, that number one, isn't it hard to get diagnosis? Like some people don't even believe that that's a real thing.
Right.
So for you to overcome that, is it?
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like your experience that you were sharing, that, I was sick for a long time, not knowing what was going on. Finally, a doctor said, oh, here's what it is. And I didn't know what it was at the time, and I said, okay, what do we do? And she was like, you just live with it. And I'm like, that's not going to happen. And
That's
then,
the scariest thing is
yeah,
when someone else tells you what
yeah,
to do.
yeah. Yeah, and then as it sounds like you did too. You kind of explore all of the different avenues, and
Yeah.
there was some improvement. There was, but nothing that was really significant until it changed here, and then suddenly I was healed.
Oh my gosh, that's beautiful. I cannot get past those stories.
Yeah,
Those are the ones that need to be like projected out there and like in people's ears so they know that it is not a life sentence. It's not their
right.
and their DNA is not their destiny. I mean, I think we hear that
Yeah,
all the time, but you really have to
yeah,
realize like what you grew up with is how you were trained to eat.
yeah.
And it makes a difference if you make those shifts. But the same thing is what you grew up with mindset, to oh my gosh,
Mhm.
the whole topic about money, right?
Right.
How
Yeah,
people were raised with that. Yeah,
yeah.
that's a great
Money,
example.
health,
Yeah.
relationships, jobs, career, starting your own business, all of those things go back to mindset and how we're programming. I call it mind apps, like apps on your phone.
I
um,
love that.
but we have all these mind apps that we get from people, most of them well-meaning, and yet the result is that we're running on autopilot and we're not making conscious decisions about our health and all the other important things in life.
Yes. Yes.
So, are you able to share some about rest? It looks like it's an acronym for something. What does it stand for?
Yes, it's very sciencey and also it's a little bit of magic. So
Yeah,
it's
I love
like you
it.
said, it's 2 R's, but it's rest with 2 R's, rapid reprogramming of emotional stress technique. So
Mm,
it's a really fancy way to say, we can go into your subconscious, go find those apps and
yeah,
then rewire it.
I love
Yeah.
it.
And
Yeah,
pull them out if we need to. I just had to delete a bunch of apps off my phone because it was taking up so much space. So
yeah,
maybe that's kind of what rest does is like we
yeah,
go in and we look, what's taking up so much space that you don't need here so that
yeah.
you can do more things with your life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
use similar, it sounds like maybe similar techniques with EFT and ENLP, and of course
Mhm.
the trauma aware piece. And I call it uninstalling the apps, because
Oh my
and
gosh.
then choosing the ones that you want to install, because you're right, we have all this stuff just like on our phones and our devices, and they slow things down and they drain the battery and they have competing purposes, right?
Yes.
And we have the same thing going on in our subconscious mind, and that's the level where you make real change.
Yep. That's it. And it is, I mean, you mentioned some of those modalities, and that's what I think I love is like there are so many modalities out there. It's finding what works for you. And I
Yeah.
think the brilliance of Dr. Cindy. So Dr. Cindy is a neuroscientist, but she is also a hypnotherapist.
Mm.
So she had a practice where, I mean, she's just as far about the brain as you can imagine, and she makes it so much fun. But she had a practice where she had people coming to her. Well, I mean, she was a good hypnotherapist to begin with and had people coming to visit her. But once she integrated rest into the process, it was like whole new level. People were flying hundreds of miles to see her. But she found out about it originally. So it's Cindy took all the different modalities that she's worked with that she loved. And she thought, what do I like from this? And what can I leave behind? And how can I put it all together? So it's kind of like
Mhm.
this buffet of different
Yeah.
types of modalities. And she originally built it upon neuro emotional technique. Not sure if you know what that is.
Mhm.
That has to be all in person, whereas rest is a big differing factor that you can do it. Everything is on Zoom. In fact, that's
Mhm.
how we train all of our coaches to do it. But she found out about neuro emotional technique from one of her clients. So she
Oh,
always says,
wow.
oh, yeah, I started to improve myself even more because of one of my clients. So she learned about neuro emotional technique. And she's like, well, this is fascinating what it's doing for the brain. It's going in and it's finding some past events. And then she went deeper and she expanded things out. And so there is a little bit of EMDR put in, there is meditation, there's hypnosis. I mean, I could go on and on about the whole list, but what she did is she just packaged it so well that it's incredibly effective. In fact, we had done work with a college who had I mean, it was a retroactive study that we done. We're really excited to get into the science of this. COVID slowed us down from it. But one of the studies that we did, we had I think it was 126 participants. And they had all received rest sessions. Again, it's retroactively. So it was kind of like we asked them a bunch of different questions on the stress scale. And what we found is that 30%, like 100% of all of them had increased in a decrease in stress. And they were like, we've never seen this in tests before. So just to know that we could reduce the stress by having our clients go through the rest process. Some of them had only had one rest session, and some of them had had many, 10 or more. So it was really interesting to see that across the board. But, it's just a huge difference. And what we see when people come in and decide to give themselves permission to work on themselves. And that's, I think, where we sometimes need to start.
Exactly. It's like, when you're flying and they tell you when the oxygen mask drops, you put it on yourself first.
Yeah.
And that's how it is in life. You take care of yourself first to have any hope of being able to impact others, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to a limiting belief of, it's if I take care of myself first, I'm being selfish, and perhaps that goes back to a sense of not being worthy, that we don't deserve to take care of ourselves first. We have to serve others to prove our worthiness. Interesting how we get caught up in all that.
It really is. And then we can put ourselves last, but when we see our friends or our family members doing that, we're like, no, you deserve the most,
Exactly. Yeah. We can always point it out in others. We don't necessarily see it in ourselves.
Yes. That's why we need coaches.
Exactly.
And good friends.
Yeah, absolutely. Accountability partners.
Yeah.
So what would be like an entry point for somebody to work with you? What would be a first step?
Well, a first step would be, number one, is deciding if you're really ready to do it or not. And I hate to put the word really in front of it, because I really hope that everyone is ready. They deserve to be ready. And I know, but there are some people, whenever you say the word trauma, whether it's big T or little t trauma, there is a little bit of fear that the skeletons are going to come out of the closet. So if they want to just have a conversation, we have about 15-minute clarity calls. They're free. They can talk to one of our coaches and have a conversation we don't want anyone to go through and have a rest experience if they're not ready for it, so we want to make sure that we can answer all their questions. So if you're on the fence, contact our coaches. You can go to our website. It's rest.com, rREST.com. We're also on Instagram, where you could private message us as well. It's at rest_inc, INC, and we can have conversations there. But if they're really ready to go, then it's just going into our website, clicking on find a coach, and go in and get started. We have a 3, 5, and 10 pack session option. We really believe, we just know the more you work on yourself, the more you're going to have huge dramatic impacts. So of course, I'm going to recommend the 10 sessions. I can't imagine not ever doing this the rest of my life and receiving it. But for people who just want to get started, I don't know when this podcast will air, but we do have a pretty good deal on our 3-pack right now. So they can go in and check that out. That's so it's easy to book. Once they get assigned to a coach, then they get a scheduler, and it's all based upon their time zone. So it's really easy to book out. But I would say, if they want to do this, then you want to plan that day where kind of think about like you're going to have a massage, drink plenty of water, make sure that you don't have that blue light blasting in your eyes before you go to bed. We want to eliminate that to begin with, but at least give yourself 2 hours without blue light, and just like self-care yourself, chamomile tea, prop something underneath your legs, give yourself a journaling time, because the beautiful thing about giving yourself great sleep that night is like rest works during the process. During that 50 to 60-minute session that you have, the integration is happening. There is no doubt. But when you sleep, that's when the repair and the integration is really going spaces, because it's finally that opportunity for your conscious and your subconscious to have a conversation with one another. It's
Yeah.
kind of like parents, when they put their babies to bed, they finally can have a conversation with their partner and find
Right.
out what they did that day. So you
Yes,
want to be able to
exactly.
allow your sleep to be able to do that. And we find that the first night is really critical to have really good sleep, but even the next 3 nights, we want everyone to have good sleep all the time, but making it a conscious effort. In fact, we find, like, some of my clients, they'll call me like 30 days later and they're like, "You're not going to believe it, but I just felt this really big shift from something we worked on like earlier in this month." So it's kind of like if you go to the gym and you lift weights and you burn calories there, but because you lifted the weights, you're continuously burning calories later on during the day. Rest works like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always have that same experience with EFT and NLP, because it sounds like it's all types of energy work, right? And
Yes.
with energy work, you can expect to see those continuing benefits. And as you say, the self-care piece is so important. Just like when you go get a massage and they release the toxins from your muscles. It's the same thing, releasing those toxins that we mentioned earlier. That you want to think about the good hydration, the good nutrition, the rest, all of the kind of self-care that we
Yes.
want to really emphasize at those times.
Yeah. And I know for you, the same thing is the hope is that they create a habit of doing that
Yeah.
all the time if they can. Yeah.
Yeah. And I love what you said about the integration. I think the integration of everything is such an important piece. And uh, in my experience, not all coaches take that extra step of the integration. It's like, oh, okay, well, we're done. You had your breakthrough now.
Yeah.
But the
Yeah.
integration is such, because that just brings it all back together.
Yes, that's it. And I think that, like, that is proof, like the journaling, the meditation that people are doing without having even coaching with you or any of our coaches. They're doing that. They're doing the affirmations and stuff. But what they're not doing is they're not going back to and pulling stuff out by the root. They're not pulling the stuff that's getting uninstalling the apps, as you say.
Yes.
So I think that's the beautiful work about this type of energy work that you and I do, is that is the cherry on top. That's like the clean slate that they start with, and then they get to keep moving forward. It's like New Year's on crack.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it.
Yeah.
So I have a couple more questions for you. And
Okay.
these are things I always ask everyone at the end of our time together. So set up for the first question is, in my coaching, I use an acronym. It's MSG. And that stands for mindset, skill set, get off your asset. Because I think that brings a lot of very important principles together. We have to have the mindset, which we've talked about. Sometimes that means we need a new skill set. And of course, we need to take action to really see it manifest in our lives. So as you look over your amazing journey, what is an overarching principle that you point to that contributes to your success?
I can't tell you how much I love that question to begin with. The NSG. At first, when I first heard you say that, I was like, NSG, that's not good. No, it's great. Get off your asset. And that's it. It's something that I have done. So let me preface it with, when I have done this, that I'm going to tell you I've done, it has worked out so well for me that I wish that I would do it more. But the times I've done it, my life has completely changed. And that is, I said yes to my soul. Instead of like hearing it and being like, oh, we'll get that tomorrow, because tomorrow is where dreams go to die, right? And it was like taking action immediately, getting off my asset and just making that decision and doing it and not worrying about the how. Like, the beautiful part is when that has happened, the how never came through. It was just this knowing that it was going to get done. And the reality is we all have that in us. We just haven't made a habit of it. We don't do it enough. When we talk about not being enough, I will say the place where we are not enough is we are not enough in getting off of our asset, like you say, just doing it, just making it happen. Because I mean, we should all have permission to fail forward. I mean, the Silicon Valley isn't going to hire anyone in a startup unless they have stories of failure, right? So fail forward and listen to your soul, say yes to it and do that thing. Just do it. Figure it out. Say yes, figure it out.
Yeah, I love that. That is absolutely powerful and true. Final question is, tell us again how people can get in touch with you.
Oh, yes. Okay. So rest.com, rREST.com. There is a contact us. There's a way for you to book a rest session if you'd like, or if you just want to talk. There's like, look, we don't believe in high pressuring anybody. So when I say, if you just want to have a conversation and get some questions asked, we're really there for that. Our Instagram handle and I think our TikTok handle, hopefully are the same, @rest_inc, INC, like incorporated. We do have a private Facebook group if they want to be a part of some like-minded people who want to keep saying yes to their soul. And that is called Rethinking Mental Wellness with Rest. You just go in and answer some questions. Those reasons why we ask those questions is because we want to make sure that we can put out content that helps you. So if you haven't covered it before, if we haven't covered it before, then you would be that one person that allowed us to take that and hopefully speak to other people. We also have this is really interesting to me. Even though I talked about the big T trauma and how most of it is a little T trauma, I do think that coming to a place, because we all do have big T trauma, coming to this place and knowing that we have it, because knowing that we have it and how many times we've had adverse childhood experiences can give us this awareness of how it impacts our health, like heart disease, cancer, and all that kind of stuff. So there is a test that you can take to find out what your adverse childhood experience score is, and whether they work with you or whether they work with us. They can, or just making plans to better themselves, giving themselves permission to do self-care. They can get kind of an idea of where they rate and like what the future possibly could be, and then give themselves permission to rewrite that history, to change the statistics and say, I'm not one of those. So we always want to make sure people know about that. myacescore.org, ACE, ACE score, adverse childhood experience. And if they want to just have a conversation with me, I'm at Christie Nix on Instagram. And we also have Hello at Rest. You want to send us an email, hello at rest, rREST.
Awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
So everybody, make sure you check the show notes. All of that information will be there. I strongly urge everyone, reach out to Christie, take the invitation to have a conversation, because I think there's so many opportunities for growth and change and living the life that makes you come alive. Christie, thank you again so much for being here today.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Sally. Gosh, it's so wonderful to have a conversation with you. And I really do love all the content that you're putting out on your podcast. It is a gift.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I absolutely appreciate that. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Make sure you check in with us next time for High Frequency Mindset Podcast.